First, we'd like to welcome everybody to the Rewiring for Remote Wellness webinar. This is hosted by the IM Foundation. I am Paul Feiereisen, the founder of the foundation. This webinar is also sponsored by CareAdopt and Instructure. Today, we'll have the pleasure of hearing from a host of different professionals across the country who either at the district level or at the school level who focus on in and around wellness for the benefit of the students that we serve. So we'll go ahead and I'll kick it off and kind of give a brief introduction about the IM Foundation. Then we will turn the time over to Miriam Stevenson, who will moderate the remainder of the webinar. We most likely will not have a Q&A session at the end of this one. We foresee ourselves filling up the time, but we are excited to hear from everyone who's participating. So a little bit about the IM Foundation. The IM Foundation was created with the idea of dedicating our time and resource to helping the rising generation understand what it means to live a balanced life. And so as an organization, we focus on 5 key areas, which are 1, physical health, to be able to do the things that we want to do in life. 2, that we have emotional health, that we learn how to have real connection in our relationships, whether they be professionally or personally or what have you. That intellectual growth is a continuous process that happens in our life. It doesn't just stop when we graduate from high school or maybe college. That continues on for us. That we are financially literate and stable, that the financial aspects of our life are not a distraction from the other things that we want to achieve as we move forward. And that we are spiritually balanced, which means different things to different people. So as an organization, we've been working for nearly the past 2 years, laying the groundwork around initiatives that we are moving forward across the country, with right now the main 3 being around emotional health, around intellectual growth, around financial literacy. On the emotional health side, IM is working with schools and districts across the country to provide wellness centers as a solution to helping address the social emotional needs of the students of this generation, which are wonderful, but they're dealing with some things that are a bit bigger than previous generations have had to deal with, which of course is going to be the main focus of this webinar. Our intellectual growth piece is we're growing a $1.5 billion scholarship fund, which goes towards collegiate education, trade school, entrepreneurial, fine arts, anything that helps somebody move forward in a career path. Our financial literacy program is something that we're introducing into schools, into high schools initially, and then middle schools, so that this generation will be the first fully financially literate generation that grows up into adulthood, and so we can watch the positive effects of a whole generation making wiser financial choices the majority of the time. On the call today, we will have Dr. Quinton Shepherd. He is a superintendent from the Victoria Independent School District. Started his career up in the Chicago area, but now is down in Texas. We also have Samuel Jarman. He is the superintendent of the Alpine School District here in the Utah area. We have Jennifer Bitton, who is the assistant principal over wellness, as well as a host of other things at Westlake High School in Saratoga Springs, Utah. We have Joanne Michels, who is a licensed clinical social worker as part of the, forgive me, Joanne, the San Mateo Union High School District. April Torres is also part of the San Mateo Union High District. Miriam Stevenson, who will moderate, is over the student services at Palo Alto Unified School District. And we also have the wonderful Janae Dixon, who is part of the Wellness Center, leads the Wellness Center at Palo Alto High School. And I've seen just phenomenal things with what she and her staff are doing for the students there. So At this moment, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Miriam Stevenson, who will go ahead and moderate the rest of the webinar. And again, thanks for all those who are attending and participating. And thank you very much for our panelists and joining us.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate the introduction. I'm really thrilled to be a part of this collaboration, this project that was really inspired by people across the country responding to their students' needs, as well as now during our COVID closures, really being adaptive and responding to their changing needs, as well as all of the needs in the community, and serving in that role as schools to really hold, stand in the community and support people as they're coping with really uncertain times. To all our attendees, I really appreciate you being here and prioritizing connection, as well as collaboration and learning, especially in these times where our time is all consumed right now. So congratulations to you for showing up for yourself, for trying to connect with others and to learn from best practices, and just to spark that. A couple of housekeeping items before we join into the content. Everything, resources will be available. We'll send those out afterwards. We do have an active Q&A chat, and we'll be responding to that. Our participants are on mute. And if you do have a question that surfaces, please put it through the Q&A chat that's at the bottom center part of your screen. And we'll be monitoring that throughout. If there isn't one that we get to, we will follow up with any questions that are unanswered after the webinar, and we appreciate your feedback. There will be, this is part 1 of a 3-part series, and so please look out for those topics coming up in both May and June that will focus on shifting to summer, as well as trying to adapt to whatever our new normal looks like in our back to school times. So I want to focus us on the reason we're here today. First, we're going to start off with some a leadership glance, learning from each other. So during these uncertain times, it's so important, I feel, to shine the light on each other's best practices, our thinking, and to really share that to support ourselves and our community as we really are in an uncharted territory. So with that, I'm going to turn to our panelist. As Paul introduced, Dr. Quinton Shepherd is joining us. He is currently in his 2nd year as superintendent for Victoria Independent Schools. He has a priority on listening to the voice of the community, parents, staff, and students, and from that is really engaging with his community in a variety of task force to actively incorporate them into the change that the district needs to do in order to respond to their needs. He's an international speaker, and his real mission is on building community ownership over the changing needs of leadership. I also want to welcome Dr. Sam Jarman, who is serving in his 5th year as superintendent of Utah's largest school district, Alpine School District. He has over 34 years of experience in education, and all things from drafting teacher to football coach, assistant principal. He's been honored for his leadership, and he has served in a variety of positions at the district level as well. I also want to welcome Jennifer Bitton, who, like me, is my previous role was serving in the site leadership, working with wellness and really building out that initiative. Jennifer Bitton brings a great passion for her work, along with 16 years as a teacher, 10 years as an administrator, so a wealth of knowledge and passion. She supports the initiatives attached to social, emotional, and wellness, and she is the first in her district to bring a wellness center and is proactively working to identify and address the issues that our generation is facing, our rising generation is facing. She's passionate about helping students prepare for what lies ahead, and she is looking forward to post-COVID times when she can get out and travel again. I think we all are. So welcome, panelists. Thank you for being here. We'll jump into kind of just a easy conversation around different topics, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A to see if there is any questions that emerge as we are live. Paul, if you don't mind switching to the next slide. So first, we want to start in a global perspective and really hear from you all who are sitting in really critical positions of leadership, how this experience and your context is really reframing or reshaping what you think of matters in leadership. How is it just reshaping your vision as a leader? And with that, I think Paul will need, I appreciate everyone's patience. We'll need to practice some adaptivity as we learn technology, but why don't we start with Jennifer? I believe your video and camera's on, or actually, sorry, we'll start with Dr. Quinton Shepherd.
Perfect. I'm happy to jump in. How has this shaped my leadership experience? Interestingly, it has reaffirmed what I have believed to be true for about the past 5, 6, 7 years. I've been a superintendent for about 15 years. Before that, I was a high school principal. Before that, an elementary principal, and of course, a teacher before that. But for about the last 5+ years, I think the leadership has been evolving rather dramatically across the country in 2 really distinct ways. Number one, this whole notion that there is a technology out there and it is part of our decision-making process as leaders. And so for me, it bifurcates along the decisions that we make. Essentially, we make complicated decisions and we make complex decisions. Complicated decisions, there are teams of experts who do that. It's well known, well established, there's a correct answer and there's a way to do it. That is essentially the decisions that we make inside the school district. Complex decisions are all those things that we don't know how to respond to. COVID is a great example. Like when it originally hit, there was no right way to approach how we're going to do remote instruction, for instance, or mental health for kids, or there's myriad issues at hand. And so my leadership is sort of formulated around putting complex issues in front of the people who can best make the decision. And that's what allows there to be a sense of ownership behind all decisions. So that was a big one that reinforced. I think the other thing that has been reinforced for me is the evolution away from competence as the only thing that matters. We look at teachers, we look at administrators, we look at superintendents, and we judge and we evaluate. And it's on a scale of good or bad, right or wrong, and it's just never ending. And largely, I think it was brought about because of so much of focus, national focus on standardized testing. But I think competence, there's a nail in the coffin coming for competence. I think opposite of competence is compassion. And compassion, I use that word very seriously because at the heart of the word compassion is passion, and passion means to suffer. And I think what we've learned from this experience is that when we share our suffering and we encourage others to share their suffering in a non-judgmental way, it can have a profound effect on the human spirit and the human being and this existence that we're all in right now. And so I've been focusing a lot on compassionate leadership, focusing on the suffering points and honoring that, and then fighting against competency-based, because there's parts of this that aren't going well. And if we openly admit that, but in a non-judgmental way, we can have honest conversations about equity. We can have honest conversations about improvement and so on and so forth. So it's reinforced a lot of what I think has been coming for the last 5 to 10 years.
Thank you, Dr. Quinton. Sam, would you like to add anything or speak to how it's shaping your leadership perspective and what you're prioritizing?
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. I think that, just adding to what Dr. Shepherd has said, we have just this most recent few months have gone through such a change where who is the decision maker for us? Right now, it's our governor. He tells us what is happening. And so because of that, we have, through our leadership teams, have become, I don't know, I'll describe it as I go home more tired now than I did on a normal day. And I think it's because we're in creation mode all the time. We're trying to come up with ways to solve the problems that we're dealing with the coronavirus and the limitations that we have. Our teachers had 2 days notice to be ready to go with online learning. And I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to have 2 different types of coaches working with our teachers, not only for curriculum, but also for the technology side of things, to support them in that effort to be ready to go and to try and change from the classroom to the online learning experience. So this constant changing, I think is something that has really influenced the way that I work with my leadership team to try and help support our teachers and ultimately our students so that learning continues to take place, and so that our teachers feel like there is that sense of, hey, we care about you, we want to do all that we can to give you the support that you need, both from the academic side, the technology side, and from the social and emotional well-being side.
Yeah, it's so important. We're seeing such, I mean, I think everyone's experience of this crisis is somewhat different based on timing and experience, and it's really highlighting the importance of collaborating and also the adaptability, right, and under short circumstances and that pressured. I think you're bringing up a good point about leaving grace for people as they are trying to do the best with what they have with limited control over their circumstances. That tags into that much needed compassion. I'm going to switch to Jennifer and see, I know your school was in a particularly hard space already prior to closure, so I'll switch to you and let you speak to how this is affecting your version of leadership.
Yes, Westlake has had an interesting year this year. It's been a hard year in the sense that we've had 3 students die by suicide. And the most recent one was just a week before closures at school. And so that whole week we were supporting kids emotionally, as you can imagine, and then school was shut down on Friday. And so this was a huge concern for us as to how we were going to support the kids as leaders, as teachers, because truly that week learning was not on their minds. It was, how do we get through this and cope with the loss of one of our friends and our classmates. And so I think the whole schools closing has really brought forth the evidence, the reality that maybe I didn't perceive before. I mean, I knew students struggled out there, but I also, you know, didn't really take time to think about how, you know, there are kids with homes who don't have internet, kids who have to now drive down the road and park in the parking lot of the church in order to, you know, receive access, or the support at home is not there. And so going forward with leadership on the school level, I think whenever we do trainings or speak with teachers or create lessons or anything, that we have to keep those things in mind, keeping in mind that, you know, what kids actually do have access to, consider situations of support at home, and really think about those things and how we work with the students in that way.
Miriam, if I could jump in, I'd just like to, you know, honor what you said there, Jennifer. I think you said something that's weighed heavily on my mind as well, in that we have some pretty dramatic equity issues in the country, and it doesn't matter what school district you're a part of. And this great big pause has been an opportunity for all of us to examine that and what it means for us and what it means for our leadership moving forward. I think one of the things that I'm fearful of is that when this experience begins to lighten up and we can get back to business as usual, whether that's 6 months from now or 8 months from now, that you know, there's going to be this mass push to sort of forget this experience and get back to the business of spending money and get back to the business of education as it was, and sort of forgetting this moment. And there's a collective reason for that, but I think it could be devastating for us to miss this opportunity to actually do something for kids that need us.
Absolutely.
I agree. I feel like this moment, as difficult as it is, and yes, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different ships trying to navigate that storm. And so I think it's highlighting that. I think that danger of collective amnesia, both possibly for coping, right, to be able to close out this chapter of trauma and try to form something new. I see that functionality, but I like you, have the concern that we'll get back into kind of the cycle of things, and we really need to hold on to that lesson of recalibration of the only thing really that truly matters. The most important thing is that you're healthy and well and connected, and our students are, and so that they can learn. And without that, there isn't learning. Our whole purpose for being here, we can't fulfill that. So I think for me, on top of that, it's also highlighted the importance of our staff and their wellness, and making sure that our students can only be as well as the people that sit in service of them and try to support them. And so that is really, I think it's keeping what matters at the forefront, but also making sure that we're seeing that as a whole community, that our wellness is interconnected. And so that is really, in my leadership, what I'm thinking about and trying to hold on to. And I agree that it's going to take leaders to continuously put forth the priority of Maslow's over Bloom's, right? So, and we need to make that in our leadership decisions so that we don't lose sight of the great learning that has come from this difficult moment.
Miriam?
Yes.
I also think, I mean, kids are craving that as well. They don't want to forget, you know, when we had our first student die by suicide, you know, we all rally around, and then the second one, and we all rally around, and then pretty soon 3 months go by, and, you know, why don't we still have this feeling? And then the third one. And so I really think, you know, that's one thing I'm hearing from students when I talk to them, is we need to keep this feeling of wanting to reach out and be kind to others and really support each other. And so that's going to be one of my goals, is to keep that as a focus for sure.
Thank you.
One of the I guess I'll tell a story. When we began this school year, we felt so strongly about the social and emotional connection for kids that we had all 8,000 of our employees attend a meeting at a venue that could hold that many. And we had a gentleman by the name of Dr. Matt Swenson come and talk to all of our employees about the importance of three things: helping our kids feel safe, helping them feel connected, and then building their confidence. And I felt like that was one of the real positive experiences in my career, of being able to say that everyone in my district was receiving the same instruction, that this, we call it Everyday Strong initiative. It's not a program, it's just a way of life, that we would hope that from our bus drivers to our cafeteria workers to our teachers to our custodians to me as a superintendent, that that would be our goal, and that we would be striving to reach out to kids, because if they don't feel safe, they probably aren't going to learn. If they don't feel connected, they probably won't attend. And if they aren't being built with confidence, then we're falling short in our efforts. So I'm sorry I interjected there, but just wanted to share that one experience that we had. I felt like it was a great unifying experience for our district.
It is a powerful experience. It's also, as I think as a teacher early on in my career, to have a leader say that this is what matters at the beginning of the year really sets the tone that we can all recalibrate to. So I think that's an important thing for us all to put at the forefront at the beginning and prioritize for our staff, so they feel permission to let go of the things that are not essential and focus on the things that are. So that permission you gave them in that space is huge in terms of going first in making that statement. I'd like to switch just to another prompt to see if it generates more conversation. And we will, this one is going to be towards what's helping your community and connect and cope. And this can be students, staff. I know in our community, there was an early move to switch to pass, no pass, and that was really to kind of give breathing space, and it helped some. And now we're seeing a second wave of anxiety of what does that mean? And so I'm curious from you all, and I know there's questions in the chat box too around, are we pausing our evaluation systems? What parts are we proceeding with? And what parts aren't we? Because this isn't a normal baseline for anyone. So I'm curious, in your communities, what are some things that are helping provide certainty in uncertain times and helping people connect and cope with the challenges that they're facing? And maybe we'll go in rotation, and I'm going to throw this one to you, Quinton.
Sure. So I think, leadership, you serve many functions at multiple different levels. And at times our job as leaders is to set a vision and set a clear direction. And in normal times, I think that that's really appropriate. I read an article last week that sort of shifted my thinking a little bit and gave me some new language that I had not previously used. And it's the effect of leadership around this notion of holding, what it is to hold our employees or to hold our students, and how do you emotionally hold someone when they're struggling in times of difficulty or chaos or what have you. And I like that language because it's what I've been trying to figure out for the last several weeks, and have had some good opportunities with our staff around that. So one of the things that we did with staff early on as this experience was happening is we did a mega Zoom. Hundreds and hundreds. I think there were over 600 people on our Zoom from our staff, and we framed the entire hour of professional development around storytelling. So we use a digital tool called Thought Exchange, and I asked every single participant, all 600 people, to tell the story about where they were when they heard that we were going to be closing our schools or shutting down our schools. And so then we crowdsourced that, and we picked 4 or 5 of the best stories that we wanted to hear, and those teachers then unmuted their mics on this mega Zoom, and they told that story about where they were. And then we pivoted into a second exchange, and I asked the question, how do you as an educator want to be remembered when this experience is over? What is it that you want your students to think about you and the families and so on and so forth? And those were, I mean, it was a tear fest. I think all 600 people, myself included, had a really hard time choking back tears, hearing stories of teachers sharing how they want to be remembered from this. And so we encouraged the space for that storytelling as well. It took about 40 minutes to do that. And then I wrapped up this professional development by saying, you told your story at the beginning, and you told your story at the end, how you want this, and we're right in the middle now, and we're telling that story. We're creating that story arc of our lives and this experience, and it's just important to have that in your mind of the trajectory of the storyline, just to create some grounding for people. We've done all kinds of attempts at making connections, collateral connections, creative connections with staff, regularly trying to bring people together in spaces like this, but not just to hear, a little bit different than what's happening today. We're actually more interested in getting them to speak to us. So we do a lot of Q&A and virtual events and so on and so forth, because it's not as powerful when folks are logged on and just hearing from an expert or a few experts as when they get to share their own stories. There's just something unique and empowering about that. And so we've been focusing more on that than practically anything else.
I think that's great. It's great to hold space for that. And I think that holding is key, because if you're holding it by yourself, it's so much heavier. But if you're holding that in community with others and supported in alignment with your leadership, there's such great power to that shared holding, so that the weight isn't bared, because that's too much to carry individually. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to allow Sam or Jennifer to add in any thoughts that they have, or they can selectively pass as well.
I'll go ahead and talk about this. First, I love Dr. Shepherd's idea. I'm going to do that with my staff, just being able to get together and share those stories. So thank you so much for that. That's going to be amazing. As I was thinking about our community and the things that we're doing to help them connect and cope, I think it starts with just being honest with them, right? Because none of us have ever done this before. Parents have never had to supervise homeschool or remote learning. Most teachers haven't taught that way as well. And so I think being able to be honest and be able to say, I don't know, as well as, I'll do my best to find out. But I think that's been really huge. We're not pretending that we know and have all the answers. And so being able to have grace with each other and forgive each other for our shortcomings, and then being able to work on those, it has been huge. And I know our parents really appreciate that. As you could imagine, we filled a lot of phone calls and emails around the topic of, school and remote learning. And so just being able to be honest with them and figure things out has been really helpful.
Thanks, Jennifer. I just wanted to go back to what Miriam started with this question, and that was the grading process. So just so that everybody knows, my district, we have made the decision that we would go with students receiving the grade that they have earned, but that would be down to a C, and then anything below a C is a passing grade. We don't care if the student has been totally disengaged or not. We don't know all of the reasons why they would have been disengaged, but the student also has the right to take the P as an advantage. So in other words, if I'm a straight A student and I'm getting a 4.0 throughout all of my high school experience so far, and now I'm getting a B in a class, we're even allowing that student to choose to have a P that would override the B grade. So we're giving A minus, B plus, B minus, C plus, C, and then Ps. I think that is an effort to show these kids that we are trying to help you during a very, very unique time of your lives. We've received some criticism from people about that. Teachers saying you need to teach kids responsibility. Well, I think right now we need to teach these kids that we care about them, and that we can look past the fact that some of our teachers haven't done a whole lot during this almost 8-week period now, and yet we're still paying them, and we're not evaluating them individually as far as being a successful or non-successful teacher. And so for me, the grading piece is very important to try and show that we're being compassionate. The second thing was, we have been looking at this as how has our district been able to be supportive to our community? And when you think about it, yesterday I got the numbers, we fed over 41,000 meals. That's a big deal. We have become the soup kitchens in our communities, in our schools. That is a huge help to our community. And I appreciate that we have the committed cafeteria workers and lunch managers who are willing to be out there on the front lines providing these meals for kids. Others, some of our CTE teachers have jumped in and used their 3D printers to help create the masks for our frontline workers. Others have used their sewing areas to create the cloth masks. There have been a number of ways that we've been able to, I think, provide, and we're not unique. Most districts have been doing this, but I think that it's a great opportunity to celebrate the importance of public education in our communities and to show that we play a valuable role well above and beyond just the academics and the learning that takes place to create that next generation of leaders. So I hope that helps with the way that we are contributing to our society as our public school districts.
Thank you, Sam. I agree. I think this is highlighting that schools are really at the heart of the community. They're that connective tissue that keeps everyone together. I also am hearing a lot around this authenticity of them needing to show up truthfully, like Jennifer was saying, of like, this is a first time for everyone. And that builds trust, that builds more equality, so that we're in this together to try to problem solve and work through the difficulties that we're facing. Our district, like your all's, is also just treating this as not normal. I know people are talking about remote learning. No, this is crisis learning. This is crisis working. This is chaotic, and there's a lot of lack of control. And so with that aim to answer some of the chat Q&A questions that are coming up, we're not treating this as a good baseline of indication of what our students and staff are capable of. This isn't a good time to do an evaluation of where gaps are in learning or where gaps are in teaching. And so we're really responding in that way and treating this as the different space that it is. I know there's also some attendees who are looking at elementary strategies, and in our district, we've noticed that you all know this, but when you're young, it's truthfully that social emotional learning is the most important skills that they're getting, and that's really at the heart of the education of our elementary schools. And so our schools are trying to respond by maintaining those connections. We have secretaries sending out recordings to their students, or holding reading time so that they can see all the kids that they would normally see during the day, and just trying as much as possible to be that community that they are to each other, but in a remote space. And it's so much more difficult, even if they're holding a dance party, to get all the kids moving at the same time. I do want to shift to the last two questions, and then we'll be shifting to some practical strategies to help people maintain wellness and support our students in that. The two questions that we're looking at, and you can chime in on both or either, are what are you hoping to hold on to from this experience? So really well connected to what we were talking about earlier. And what advice would you give to others on how to set conditions for the people that you're in service of? Like, what would we do? What are you hoping to hold on to? And if you have any advice or words of wisdom that would give space to setting conditions for others to cope.
I would be happy to jump in on this this last bit about coping, and just give where my head is at right now and what we're trying to plan for. So the way I kind of stumbled on this thinking was thinking about, what do astronauts do when they come back from the International Space Station, if they've been there for a while, for a prolonged period of time. And there's this period of weeks that they go through after they come back of sort of recalibrating back to society. And I've been talking about that with a lot of different folks, just to try to get as much feedback as possible. And I also use the word feed forward. So like, you want feedback about what you've done in your past, and you want feed forward about what you're going to do in the future. And so I've been trying to get feed forward about what can we do with this idea. And a very close friend of mine shared this phrase. It's reverse culture shock. And we're all going to go through that, right? There's going to be a period of months in our future that we're going to be told it's okay to go back out and resume life as normal. And you're probably going to have people on a spectrum. Folks who are emotionally well balanced and healthy and strong supportive networks at home are going to be able to unlock their front door and go out, and life is going to be back to normal in a matter of hours or days. There are going to be folks on the other end of the spectrum that are not ready to come back, and they're not in an emotionally well space or healthy space. And so what I'm trying to do is to recruit some health experts, mental health experts, specific to this defined space. And I'm going to bring those folks hopefully in for my staff to have a conversation like this. And then I want to use that opportunity and some of the counseling staff that I already have to break into groups to help folks talk about and narrate this experience, to draw meaning from it, right? Because that's the whole point of this thing we call life and existence, is to draw meaning from our experiences. And talking about that, creating space for that, is really important. And I think it's imperative for all of us to think about what's coming next. And I always joke that any fool can see the ball bounce the first time. It takes someone with real skill to see the ball bounce a second and third time. This is, 2 or 3 bounces from now, we know we're going to need this. So we might consider starting work on that now. And if that's true for our staff and for our leadership, you can assume it's true for our kids too. And so the whole point in doing this is to learn as an organization how we can do the same thing for our students when the time comes.
Thank you, Quinton. Yes, go ahead, Sam.
Okay, thank you. We have what we call our social and emotional well-being team that's made up of social workers, psychologists, behavior specialists, school nurses. I'm trying to think of if I've missed one of the groups, but that team, and our school counselors, both at the elementary and secondary levels. And that team of what I'm going to call service providers and experts in that area, they have been working, and it goes along with what Dr. Shepherd was saying, will continue to offer the support and help Jennifer was talking earlier about the suicides that have taken place, but this week, yesterday, we lost a 9-year-old student to a motorcycle accident. And that team immediately went into work mode to give support to not only the principal, but to the family and the teachers that are involved with that student and those who know that student. And I think that it's important that we do continue to focus on the development of the whole child. From that standpoint, social and emotional well-being, as well as the academic success, and help them make that transition so that they can be productive members of our society. I would hope that that team continues to give support not only for our students, but to our staffs as well, so that as these experiences that we're learning from will have an impact on us, but there will be continued need for support from those people. We have teams of those service providers that are assigned to each of our schools, and hopefully they will be able to come together with the regular teaching staff and the leadership teams at those schools to meet the needs of our students and their parents, etc. So I'm hoping that we can learn from this experience those things, but also I think there's going to be a dramatic improvement maybe in the traditional, what I would call the traditional classroom experience. I think that many of our teachers have learned a lot about the technology and are seeing the benefits of using Google Classroom and Canvas as platforms that can help to move the learning forward in a different way. We've always talked about technology as an accelerator of learning, and I think that we can bring those together, the traditional classroom and the technology, and really make some improvements. And I think that the confidence, even though it was a forced effort by the COVID-19, I think that the confidence of teachers has been increased as they have learned more and more about the use of the technology and how do I create good curriculum. How much curriculum should I assign? How much work should students be expected to do? We've got the full spectrum of that we've been dealing with. And I think that we're learning a lot about listening to parents, listening to students, and giving them credibility when it comes to, you know what, it's not students trying to get out of something. They don't understand or they don't have access to the technologies. And so how do we help them and improve that learning experience?
I agree. Thanks, Sam. That came up in the chat, the Q&A as well, is how do we distinguish between the can't versus the won't? And then how do we work with them to remove whatever's creating the barrier to that? I do want to shift our panel to focus to our school districts and talk about some logistical work that's happened to create in short turnaround the infrastructure to support connection and to support wellness, including therapy ongoing. As we transition, I want to thank our panelists. If you're hoping that you can remain on the call, I know there's Q&As that are coming in for you, and we look forward to inviting you back for the next couple of series. I want to shift to Joanne Michels and April Torres. Joanne Michels works as a therapist. She's a licensed clinical social worker and has her credential for PPS service. She's done school-based mental health in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 10 years, and is currently working in San Mateo Unified High School District with April. April joins us with a wealth of experience in education over 22 years and a passion for mental health, well-being of students and families. So with that, I want to transition. They're going to share with you the steps that their district took to put in place the infrastructure that a lot of us are talking about from the leadership standpoint to provide that direct service without interruption to our students. So April, Joanne, I'm going to turn it over to you all.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. So I will begin, and Joanne and I like to work in tandem to make sure that we're hitting all the points. So we'll work together on this. I think I'd like to start with just a little bit of context, only because we know that the listeners, there's a lot of different programs and models out there. We are a high school district, and we have about 9,500 students in our district. So that's 9th through 12th grade. We have 7 high school, 6 comprehensive, 1 continuation alternative program. And then we also have schools within, programs within our schools. So we have a middle college program that's at our community college. We have a bridge program that is for our newcomers that are older, that would not earn a traditional high school diploma. And then we have our therapeutic day programs. We have about 25 therapists that are sprinkled amongst these schools and programs. And Joanne and I oversee the therapist and the programs, including our special education program. We also focus on, you can see here just an organizational chart. We are also in charge of our tobacco grant and our substance use and vaping programs and alternative to suspensions. So we have different services available, all ran through our mental health teams. Our program is a vetted program. We do not use outside resources to come in to support our students. We do connect and work with our outside programs, but we in our school systems, we have all of our therapists are in-house and vetted. So that's just a little bit of background of information on our system, our context of our system. And then this was sprung on to us fairly quickly, and Joanne and I wanted to act swiftly, and the first thing we did was reached out to the Board of Behavioral Sciences and the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. And with their support, we were able to build a telehealth care system, which all of our therapists were able to start with. We've fine-tuned it since March 16th, but we were able to build it fairly quickly with the help of BBS and CAMPT. Joanne, did I forget anything so far?
No, you covered a lot of the context and the framework, so.
Great. I'd like to offer you to go ahead and start with the telehealth care piece.
Sure. Paul, if you can move to the next slide, please. All right, so as April had mentioned, we were tasked with really designing a totally new program with all of the resources that we have within our district. And one of the things that April had touched upon was we had district leadership at the higher level with our superintendent and his cabinet look to us to really provide a streamlined level of service. That was his priority, and because of that support, we were able to really hit the ground running in designing and researching all the best practices for telehealth care. Much like many other schools, I believe that we are still building the plane as we fly it. So this is truly a framework and some nuts and bolts to help other school districts and programs develop some of their models that is appropriate for them within their states, within their counties, and within their own school, with the school resources that they have. So as April mentioned, we really look to our California Board of Behavioral Sciences for best practice and general provisions. There are live links here if anyone would like to click on that when we publish this and moving forward. We really focused in on the service delivery model. So we have a district-wide telehealth care service program And the interventions include individual sessions. We felt that it was very important to continue scheduled and requested sessions to be available during the school day, much like online learning to a certain degree. We really wanted to provide that continuity of care also through our wellness program that is available for parents, families, staff as well, so they can not necessarily have a session with us, but if they needed any consultation about a student or a group of students, we would be available for them also. We provide a level of case management. We encourage our teams to meet weekly with to discuss things that are going really well, to discuss things that aren't going well, to problem solve. So we found that to be really important. About 2 to 3 weeks into our practice, we started to integrate student study teams, 504 meetings, IEPs. So when the health orders continued to be extended, we were looking at some sort of long-term, and by long-term, to the semester end, on how to continue engaging this process. We had initially only planned for about 3 weeks, but given all the health orders and the extensions, we had to really shift our practice and looking at what this could be for the rest of the school year. We were very clear that no group counseling would be offered for confidentiality reasons, and there seemed to be a lot of consensus around that. We established hours of operation, much like we would for the regular school day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3:30. We did have spring break during the time of closure, so we really honored that for our team and our therapists, and we held a pretty firm boundary about really taking that time for self-care and to be with their families and to really engage in their own process on how to cope with this time. Our service delivery model.
Joanne, can I just add, thank you. We also added 2 non-student work days for our staff to really be able to have the time to focus on our new implemented grading policy and just connecting as a district and as a school site. We are also, because we are a high school district, we run articulation meetings. So our special education students that are coming in with mental health services, if those were provided from an outside service, we now pick those up due to our vetted process. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you, Joy.
Perfect. Last piece for our service delivery model is the platform that we use. We are a Google school, so we had those infrastructures already built in. So our therapists do provide telehealth care through either a Google Hangout, which is a virtual video conference, or Google Phone. So we have opportunities to engage in students by phone. Unfortunately, we don't have our landlines available to us, so we had to get really creative in how to create these infrastructures or engage these infrastructures of communication. So we have used our Google resources as part of that. And our Google calendars have really been efficient in providing some structure around scheduling and sending out invites. So we've really maximized the Google suite to help support our telehealth care services.
Thank you so much, Joanne and April. I know the work, you were ahead of us on the journey and your work benefited our district. I'm hoping that this infrastructure that you've built will also benefit other districts. As I imagine in our new normal, we'll have pieces of telehealth that remain the same or carry into it, especially as we may not have all of our students transition back to in-person attendance. So I appreciate that. I'm going to switch and share a little bit more. We've talked about the infrastructure. My colleague Genevieve Pierre-Dixon is going to join me to speak about how what we're seeing with that infrastructure in place is it's creating different boundaries that we haven't experienced before for students in terms of accessing mental health services. And so how do we start to normalize that? I'm going to be rather quick and mindful of time. Our panel was fantastic, so but these examples will be available to you afterwards, as well as we'll be able to answer any direct questions that you have. Genevieve Pierre Dixon's our mental health and wellness coordinator at Gunn High School. She's passionate about removing barriers to access and improving the mental health of the community, including parents and students. We are a district that's TK-12, so the little ones up to the high school, over 12,000 students across 19 campuses, 12 of which are elementary, 3 middle, 2 high, and 1 hospital school, as well as similarly to April and Joanne's district, middle and college dual enrollment programs. While we have mental health support at all levels of our system, at the elementary, it's psychologist paired with some contracted mental health therapist about a day or 2 a week, depending on the size of the school. At middle school, we have school counselors in addition to a school psychologist and some contracted mental health. And then today we'll talk a little bit about what our wellness centers are doing to really bridge the gap, the new digital divide that has opened as we're trying to reach and serve students digitally. So we'll focus, we have 2 wellness centers. They are staffed by 2 district employees. I'm going to share our model on the screen briefly, but you can look at that in the future. And then I'm going to ask Paul to kind of just shift to the new now. What we're noticing and what we've noticed so far is that the digital divide that's been created, our wellness centers were designed to be, you go through on the campus, 1 door, and you get connected to the services you need. You can go there to decompress, to reconnect with a strategy, a person who's helped you, to just be held, like we were talking about, by someone who's supportive, or to have your needs supported in that way. So in transitioning to this new now, we have talked about Maslow's needs. We've got a new adapted Maslow's needs on the next slide, identifying that in addition to those basic safety needs and everything else, that we also have this need for connection, battery. I would also add bandwidth, both physically as well as literal bandwidth, and that's true for our staff. So I'm going to switch to Genevieve, who is going to talk about how we've gone from 1 door to multiple digital pathways and what the work is looking like to make this an approachable method, as many of our students are finding it quite foreign to try to be vulnerable through digital devices, which is somewhat ironic given that they're a digital generation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Genevieve, to speak about the steps that we're taking to normalize that method in this less than normal now.
Sounds good. If you don't mind switching to the next slide, that would be super helpful. So as Miriam said, we are kind of a 1 door pathway with our wellness centers. We do have 2 high schools. I am the wellness coordinator at Gunn High School, and red and black are our colors, so go Titans. We do daily wellness outreach messages through our wellness outreach worker every day to our students, and they are heart, mind, and soul messages. So the heart piece is really the physical piece of getting up, moving around, giving them some tips on that. The mind piece, of course, kind of attaching to wellness, things that they can do to improve their mental health, and the soul, just, different funny memes or things that they can connect with themselves as well as connect with each other. We do a lot of collaboration with all of our student clubs on campus, our wellness clubs, as well as our kind of ASB, or we call it SEC, our kind of executive cabinet of students. They help and support us with connecting with the activities that they're doing, and we get to integrate wellness in there, and it's really helpful. All of our contracted agencies are using telehealth therapy for ongoing support. They've maintained their caseloads even though we are no longer on campus, and have actually opened up room and space to add additional students to that list as we see the need come up for students that are at home right now. We've also, on top of that, added an element of a virtual drop-in. So students are able to self-elect for sessions through a Google form, and I field all of those requests and then delineate them to our agencies and support. We do have support in Mandarin as well as in English, so it's helpful to be able to utilize that support. And they also are a part of supporting our parents directly as well. We get to spend some time kind of finding new ways to connect. So we've been chatting with students on our school information system, which is Schoology for some of our kids who are having difficulty with finding space in their home, and really finding the privacy that they need to be able to express themselves. And so we've tried to adapt to that as well, to give them the space to kind of have these instant messages back and forth if they prefer, as opposed to using the phone or using Zoom or another video platform. We have worked really hard this week and last week on our new video project, so that we can personalize our therapists again for our students. We're going to do a little intro for all of us, and post that on our website, as well as on Schoology as a platform our students use, so that they get a chance to see our faces again, get a welcoming message from us. And then we're also going to use that platform to explain different therapeutic skills and have them out there, less than 5-minute videos for students to connect with and to be able to build those skills at home. And if you can go to the next slide. We talk a little bit more about supporting staff and our families. So I put out a weekly message to all of our staff on Gun Campus, and I call it Weekly Wellness Wonderment. And so I do a little bit of uplifting messages, personal things, talking about what we're facing as adults and as caring support people for our students, as well as for our families. And I also add resources there each week on different topics each week. We're working on creating a staff buddy system and providing individual support as well for our staff members. We've opened up that support. I provide support to staff as well, and working on additionally adding a Wellness Wednesday for all of our staff across all of our schools to engage in a meditation exercise or some sort of wellness activity that we can all do together as a group. We have a couple of different tools that we've been using to really liaison with our community organizations and get our students, families, and staff connected with mental health support directly in the community, to expand on the offerings that we have within the Wellness Center and expand our capacity as well. We support our school counselors and staff members on really supporting students and families and understanding the pass, no pass, credit, no credit system, and really showing the benefits of that and giving students the benefit of the doubt to do their best in times of really uncertainty and unknown and difficulty with access to the supports that they need to be their best selves. We, on top of that, have really expanded on using our family engagement specialists, and another program that we have in our district and on our school campuses, to reach out and do some porch visits from a proper social distance, to really check in with our families that we're not able to get a hold of due to technology or access or some of these other reasons, but to check in to make sure that they have what they need, and they are also delivering meals to families that way, as well as students and families being able to come onto our campuses to access those meals as well. And we're expanding our video project in order to support our parents and put tips out there, give them also uplifting messages, and possibly look at starting some support groups or some different things for our parents to have an outlet and also a connection to all of us personally at the Wellness Center. And to kind of encapsulate all of those things, we've really worked hard to put together different tools for our staff so that they really know what the baseline is, when to worry, and what to do with that worry and where to go, and have a really comprehensive system set up for if there is a crisis or a concern and what that looks like. And so this is kind of an example of our table of contents for our staff support document and all the different things that we have outlined for our staff and ways that they can get access to that information. And then a little bit about kind of mental health first aid and giving them, again, baseline tools in which to engage with students in conversations about their mental health, their well-being, and their overall wellness.
Thank you so much, Genevieve, and for our participants who have been able to stay a little bit longer than our scheduled time. The work that you're doing to normalize these new methods of connection and support is so important, because you can have the resources, but if no one's connected to them, we're not meeting the need. So I really appreciate just the adaptability and the creativity of there's nothing we won't try to support our students. We will be sharing these resources with you, as well as anything that can help you help people in a non-normal time. return to the normal judgment. We see that a lot of our staff lose track of what's normal because everything has been turned upside down. So as much as possible as we can put those in their pathway is the goal, and what I encourage you all to do. Please reach out to our team if you need any support. Here's our upcoming webinars. We will be shifting. We will have one, on May 20th that's going to focus on shifting from shutdowns to summer, and it's really going to highlight self-care for staff, how to celebrate, how to find some sort of closure, whether that's through celebration, through mourning, through grief, and then be able to have a plan for approaching self-care that can allow us to restore. So no matter what we're facing, we're better equipped to manage it. We will also be doing one on June 17th, focused on back to school, highlighting different spaces that are getting creative of blended models. And you can register at the IM Foundation's website. We will be sending this presentation again with the slide that's coming up with our contact information. So if you want to consult or have questions or just want a thought partner in whatever it is you're coping with, we are here to do that. It's our pleasure to be able to be in community with you and hopefully create something that provides support to others. So with that, I thank you for your time, your patience, and we look forward to joining back on our next webinar.